We are in Piedmont, where the province of Novara meets the Verbano Cusio. Anyone interested in nature and in search of serenity cannot avoid the indescribable charm of Lake Orta and the villages surrounding it. A blending of history and legend beginning from 300 after Christ on the shores of this crystal waters lake. Two Greek brothers escaped from the Christian persecutions and reached the lake. They were charged of evangelizing its lands. Giulio and Giuliano built 99 churches on the coast, while the 100th was built by Giulio on the little island, after he arrived there surfing on his boat and killed the dragon that occupied it. Here on the island, St. Giulio was buried, and from then on the bishop's power dominated the villages of the coast for centuries. This pre-alpine lake in the Middle Ages was called Lake of St. Giulio. Since 1600, the economic importance shifted to the village of Orta that eventually gave its name to the lake. Lake Orta is also called Cusio and is a little Italian treasure of intimate and striking features. The Cusio City Union has among its purposes the promotion of the 5 villages that today are part of it. Its logo is a small blue dragon that recalls the link with the history and the legend of these lands. 5 are the villages of the Cusio City Union, 3 of them lying on the banks of the sweet waters of the lake. Orta San Giulio, the old bishop's seat of power, with the island of silence and meditation, and the natural reserve of the Sacred Mountain World Heritage. Gozzano, the small enclave of the West Coast episcopal power, characterized by the monumental complex of the castle and the wealth of the canons' palaces. Pella, a town with a strong vocation for tourism, with its little harbour and the promenade, the way of the stonecutters, and old craftswork to which a monument is also dedicated. While lying on the foothills surrounded by green woods, the 2 other villages of the Union. Pogno, an open-air art gallery, which stands for the priceless paintings on the walls, made by valid contemporary painters. Sorriso, that can boast of having been an independent republic. We begin our historical and touristic journey from the first town you meet on the way from Novara to Lake Orta. The first city of the Cusio Union we are about to visit, reachable by car or bus, is lying on the hills not far from the lake. A village that can boast of having been, along with the villages of Valletta, Pianezza and Gargallo, an independent republic. Sorriso stands on a hill at 450 meters above the sea level, and the road leading to it ends there. Entering the small village and along the streets leading to the center, you have at once the feeling of being in a place that lived an important past. We get to Umberto I's Square, the main square overlooked by the ancient buildings of the 15th and 16th century, that are reminders of its glorious history. Since ancient times, Sorriso was not subject to the episcopal power of San Giulio, but was ruled by imperial laws, as reported in a document dated 1174. But the village suffered a breakdown in 1219. The top part became dominion of the bishops of Novara, while the inferior part, with Gozzano and Gargallo, became subject to the Republic of Novara, that after a century sold it to the Visconti of Milan. On the pavement of the entrance of Umberto I's Square, it still marked the boundary of this division. In 1494, the Duke of Milan Gian Galeazzo Sforza sold for 6,000 imperial pounds the fief of Sorriso to its same inhabitants, as long as they became subject to the bishops of Novara. The quarrels between the 2 parts, due to the different conditions, led to the decision to merge them into a single municipality. Therefore, on the 10th of July 1556, Inferior and Superior Sorriso, along with Gargallo, Valletta and Pianezza, formed a single country and established their headquarters in Sorriso, around the old border that once divided them, proclaiming the autonomous Republic of Sorriso. The archives of the city still retains the parchment of the statutes and orders with which justice was administered, and that protected property, life and liberty of individual citizens. The Republic of Sorriso distinguished itself for the courage with which it lived the years of the struggle between French and Spanish for the dominion of the territory. A period of violence followed also by the plague that struck the north of Italy at the time of Messi Sposi by Alessandro Manzoni. By the year 1796, Sorriso and the Riviera were united to Piedmont. After almost 3 centuries, the proud Sorriso Republic ceased to exist and lost its light that inspired admiration and envy from the Hill. The epic period of the autonomous republic is often celebrated in Sorriso on the last Sunday of July, with historical reconstructions reproducing events of relief set in the scenographic main square. The palace of the noble Ravizza family occupies much of the perimeter of the square. Enriched by other important buildings, most of them recently restored, keeping the original structure. At the center of the square stands the town hall. Another important building we meet along the main street is the Zucca family house, a name reminding of a famous rhubarb aperitif. The most characteristic local handcraft was that of the shoemaker, and it was relevant in the past also the presence of leather tanneries. Walking up Vittorio Emanuele Street, at the highest point of the village, we reach the parish church dedicated to San Giacomo, erected in 1400 on the ruins of the ancient castle. We go through the portal in the wall that encloses it. The church is surrounded by arcades of more recent construction which enrich its architecture. From here the view sweeps over the surrounding hills. And the paintings decorating it, like Moses with the stone tables, evaluate it even more. A careful visitor will find, however, fragments of more ancient frescoes, probably dating back to the original construction, visible on the porch westward above a door or inside near the lateral entrance, frescoes leading much farther back in time. A look inside the church shows us paintings from different eras. And a fine carved wooden choir in the chapel of St. Urban houses the bones of San Giacomo, the patron saint of Sorriso. Outside, on one side of the courtyard, there is a charnel house whose interior walls are preciously painted. Retracing our steps, in Umberto I's square, at the foot of the staircase of Ravizza Palace, a porch opens onto a cobbled street bounded by the walls of the family house. This road leads to the Church of Madonna della Gelata, Our Lady of Frost, a very fascinating place. It is surrounded by green woods, and its name derives from the place where an icy layer easily forms in winter. The construction, preceded by an ascending staircase, seems majestic. On the top of this staircase we are on a grassy terrace surrounded by trees. A gargoyle takes us to a source from which flows fresh spring water. The oratory was built in early 1600 over an existing Marian chapel. Here it was venerated the 15th century fresco of the Virgin and Child signed by Tommaso Cagnola. This habit created a very special custom linked to Nordic beliefs. The mothers carried their babies died before baptisms in front of this picture of the Madonna for the miracle of their repeat, the last breath that allowed children prematurely lost to be baptized. In mid-1600, many of these cases occurred, until the Church condemned this practice and covered with a towel the image of the Virgin. From this place you can take a footpath that winds through woods, villages and walks to the lake, which allows lovers of trekking and mountain bikers to explore on foot or by bicycle the 5 cities of the Cusio Union. We return instead downtown and walked among the medieval houses in Dante Street. At the end of it, the construction of Santa Marta peeps. This building, dedicated to Santa Marta, is the oldest church in the village, built before 1400. Inside it is housed a precious fresco attributed to the Cagnola school. A rapid look also to the Oratory of San Rocco and to the Cemetery Church of Madonna delle Grazie. From Sorriso we reach by car the second hill country. The visitor is immediately impressed by the principal feature of this village, Pogno, an open-air art gallery. The small city is among the Italian painted villages and welcomes visitors with its main feature, the artist's walls. The square at the entrance of the village shows a map with the locations of the murals painted in 1005, when Pogno held the presence of important artists such as Sandro Berdelli, Dietrich Bickler, Salvo Caramagna, Mario Carattoli, Carmen Crisafulli, Franco Mora, Dario Pareschi and Ruggero Marrani, which were warmly hosted by the local people. Water was the chosen theme as an important element for life and for the economy of the village, closely related to taps industry. A painting depicting a fishing scene is the first mural we see coming into the country. On the front of the house below a sundial, another picture attracts attention, a memory of peasant origin with a view facing the lake. Italian Alpine Square offers space for a variety of painted walls, like this dreaming, beautiful woman. From here the gaze glides over another pictorial work that interprets the industrial characteristic of Pogno, a tap from which water flows. Between the square and the Cremosina Street, the major way leading to Valsesia, is then the St. Catherine Oratory, one of the oldest of the village, dating before the 16th century. From here we approach the ancient gateway to the village, and we are overwhelmed by the beautiful painting that covers the entire side wall. Light visions that accompany the stranger on this path. Passing beneath the porch we notice that it is also decorated with a mural painting. We continue along Castle Lane. The Middle Ages left traces in the narrow streets of the village, where you can enjoy views of a simple beauty. A depiction of Our Lady of Lourdes stands on the white wall of this small church, pointing the way to Prero. The village of Pogno, whose origin is documented by a Roman inscription of the 9th century, fell under the rule of the bishops of San Giulio until 1767, as was the case for many other villages of the Riviera. Along the Cremosina road there is the oratory of Sant'Antonio and San Rocco, built at the end of 1600. Its portico gave shelter to farmers in case of bad weather, or it was a moment of prayer for the grace of a good harvest, or it simply meant a moment of rest for the traveler. Along our path we cannot miss a visit to the parish church of San Pietro, which stands on the edge of the village towards Gozzano. It was erected in 1328 as a result from a parchment preserved in the archives of the Collegiate Church of Gozzano. It stands in a high place, not far from the original settlement of Pogno. A portal gives access to an avenue leading to the staircase before the church. The facade is preceded by a portico with 3 arches supported by 8 granite columns. The courtyard has 3 sides embellished with the stations of the Via Crucis. Inside, the chapel above the altar rests the body of San Prospero, dominated by a painting of San Pietro. Brezzonno and Prero are the 2 villages part of the municipality of Pogno. A short visit to Prero to recall some of its prerogatives, as the birth of the painter Giovan Battista Giulini, called the Roman, a rather famous artist who worked in various Italian cities. In this village it was erected in the 16th century the church of San Bernardo d'Aosta, the Prero parish church. 4 pillars support a soaring lantern dome, with windows and granite friezes, covered with stone slabs and topped with additional lantern and iron cross. The houses are a clear feature of the medieval style. From Prero we go back to Pogno, and after a few kilometers we reach Gozzano. The public gardens host the tourist office that provides information to hikers on the trails and the routes of the coast of Lake Orta. Then we move to explore this village whose remote origins date back to the Bronze Age, while the very name of Gaudianum reveals its importance in the Roman times. Legend tells that 2 Greek brothers, Giulio and Giuliano, evangelized the Riviera and built their 99th church here, the San Lorenzo Church. The fate of Gozzano is strongly linked to its patron, San Giuliano. Gozzano can today offer several tourist attractions to a watchful eye. The center of the village with its square on which stands the palace owned by the noble family Ferrari Ardicini, now the city hall. The building deserves attention for its beautiful painted ceilings and the rich garden with many valuable trees. After a few meters from the city hall, there stands the 16th century church of Santa Marta, whose story is linked to its fraternities. Once, on entering Gozzano, the bishop prince was protected by a canopy and began the procession, which was opened by the brothers of Santa Marta in white tunics, those of Santo Sacramento in red, followed by the clergy and the people. The cobbled slope down the church of Santa Marta takes us to the classical palace in Via Sottoborghetto, a property of the benefactor Marquis d'Albertas. From here we can reach St. Julian Square, where the market welcoming the various goods from neighboring countries took place. In the same square there is still the palace of the community called Ciccial, where justice was administered and under whose arches the public meetings were held. Until mid of the past century the ancient prisons were still present. On the opposite side of the square stands the building of the Workers' Mutual Aid Society, founded in 1873. The square and the whole village are overlooked by the monumental structure once belonging to the castle. In the footsteps of the canons we climb on the old path, through an arch topped by a statue of San Giuliano. While in the background we see the first buildings of the ancient castle and the walls of the fortress. A few steps away and the view opens onto an impressive building, some glimpses of ancient buildings, then the eyes rest on a solemn building that was the summer residence of the bishop's count who used to stay here before returning to the island of San Giulio. A cobbled square and a short stair separate us from the majestic Basilica of San Giuliano, where the saint remains were transferred from the church of St. Lawrence in the 9th century. The imposing structure reveals that the hill was fortified and turned into castle. There are no traces of the first building dedicated to the saint, except for two capitals embedded in the masonry of the present church. The building, which was joined in the 11th century to the imposing bell tower still standing, was completely rebuilt in the 12th century in a form similar to the Basilica of San Giulio. Of that Romanesque church we can still see part of the two towers that surrounded the façade and the octagonal pillars supporting the so-called canonics porch. Notable inside some large canvases painted by Giovanni Ronchelli in 1760 depicting episodes from the lives of the two evangelist brothers. The basilica was rebuilt in early 18th century, and a crypt here are kept the remains of San Giuliano. From the hill you can enjoy a wide panorama that adds charm to this mystical place. The view reaches the Buccione Tower, included in the Natural Reserve for Historical and Environmental Preservation of the region. The tower, which dominates the whole territory, is the remnant of a fortification of the 13th century, and as a constant presence will accompany us in our journey from this moment on. We return to the center of the village and walk down the quainty alley backed by the massive wall, passing under a porch likely a secondary access to the castle. From here we return to San Giuliano Square and proceed towards the cemetery church of Madonna del Boggio of the 16th century. Not far from there we find the church of San Lorenzo. When you reach the small square grass that surrounds it, you are merged in a magical mystery atmosphere. Just the feeling of being in a mystical place, touched by its important past. The legend tells that this building was founded by San Giuliano at the end of the 4th century, a thesis supported by recent archaeological investigations that have unearthed the foundations of a Christian church in the place of a much revered burial site, recognizable as San Giuliano's, as it happened for the Basilica of San Giulio. Later, during the 7th century, the church hosted a number of tombs of noble Longobards persons. From the 8th century, a long decline began, increased by the transfer of the relics of San Giuliano in the new basilica dedicated to him. The church of San Lorenzo was anyway restored in different ages. We were lucky enough to go into the church where the latest archaeological finds unearthed during the floor reconstruction works are visible. A series of pre-Christian tombs, probably of Celtic origin, placed apparently with no order. To witness the considerable past of this place, there are the original altar and some parts of the frescoes recalling the cult of San Giuliano. We leave San Lorenzo Church with a last look at the monumental castle. And retracing the ancient village streets characterized by medieval features. We head to the beach of Gozzano, an important tourist resort recently re-evaluated. Today, after the works closed in 2010, a beautiful lakeside promenade starting from the beach allows you to walk to Pella, along a path known as the Blue Ring. On these waters, at the time of Gozzano Episcopal Enclave, the magnificent vessel of the Bishop Count slid, the Bucintoro, which, starting from the shore of Buccione, returned to the island of San Giulio. From the lakeside leading to Pella, after a 15 minutes walk, we arrived at the junction for the Church of Madonna di Luzzara, reachable also on the road from Gozzano to Omegna. We go up the path, a short pause under the shady trees surrounding the church, so we can admire the Romanesque structure and the outstanding frescoes of the 15th century on the facade. Lying on the grass just below the road, it's a favorite place for many occasions. We continue the path lakeside leading to Pella, encountering people who cross it on foot and by bicycle. The path winds through woods, meadows, stately homes surrounded by greenery and picturesque small centers. Until we reach the village of Roncallo, where the elegant promenade of Pella starts. After a few steps, we see the unfolding of the Romanesque church of San Filiberto. This was the first church built west of the Riviera in the 11th century by the canons of San Giulio to have a sacred space on the west side of the lake. It stands perched on a lawn near the shore, with the apse facing the docking from which the processions to the island live still now. The precinct consists of 14 chapels of the Via Crucis and the bell tower erected in 1100, the only part left of the ancient building, once the lonely church of the west coast. On the hill above the church of San Filiberto there is also a little village of Pella territory. We are welcomed by a garden, we cross it and realize that it's a small lookout on Lake Horta. Here a statue dedicated to the memory of the stone cutters. From this village still departs the path that once the stonemasons made to reach San Maurizio do Paglio. Along this path has been recently discovered a prehistoric hollowed rock of the Iron Age, which bears the visible pans and drains. Its religious significance is tied to fertility rites, continued even in recent times. From the parish church of Alzo and walking down the street of Romania, we meet valuable old buildings and the old door that gave access to the village. A few downhill switchbacks take us again to the docking of San Filiberto, where we return on the lakeside walk. A moment's rest in the gardens that accommodate the town hall, dominating in all its grandeur from the Madonna del Sasso, in contrast with the blue of the lake. From here, the bell tower of the parish church of Pella guides us towards the center. We are greeted by an avenue of trees on this stretch of the lake. Small boats are moored, and the first sensation is that of being in a place of tourism. The alley leads to Motta Square, a small lounge in the open. The island of San Giulio emerges in all its beauty. In the background the Tower of Buccione, and returning with the eyes to Pella we see standing the old tower, the only remnant of the medieval fortress that once defended the village. We come along a street where characteristic houses gather, till we arrive to the parish church of Sant'Albino, dating back to 1591. Much more recent, the particular bell tower erected in 1936, a gift of the stonecutters who performed it with blocks of granite coming from the quarry of Alzo. Instead, the previous bell tower stood at the opposite side of the building, as shown in this old photograph. Entering the church, we are surrounded by the warm light of the vault paintings, by the richness of the altar and the devotional works in the chapels, one in particular dedicated to Our Lady of Lourdes. Notable on the side wall a painting depicting San Nicola, San Gaetano and Santa Eurosia, executed in 1673 by the painter Giuseppe Zanatta of Miasino, a local artist recently re-evaluated. The picture style strongly matches with the characters painted by the same artist for the parish church of Miasino. A last look inside, and then we go out in the churchyard. The parish church faces a quaint bridge over the Pellino stream, which invites us to cross it. This is a donkey-back-shaped bridge dated 1591 that once served for funeral processions as a connection with the cemetery of San Rocco, like the slope of the Death in Horta. Following for a short distance the Pellino stream, we return to Mota Square, that gently stretches in the water, forming a small bay where the boats are moored. The pier to which the boats plying the lake arrive creeps like a bow in the waves where the green and blue merge in a light breeze accompanied by the swinging of the reeds, a view that immerses the tourists in a quiet atmosphere. Just beyond the jetty, the small marshy estuary of the Pellino stream. We want to remember the village of Ronco, with its church dedicated to San Defendente, situated along the ancient mule track linking the Valsesia and the lake, where the artists made their way to the island. Inside this church there is a painting of the Nativity of Mary from the homonymous chapel of Ronco, known as the Oratory of San Giulio because it contains the oldest known representation of the saint, probably painted by the Cagnola family. Back in the center of Pella, the square comes alive at the arriving of the boat, visitors coming and others leaving for the nearby island of San Giulio. The short stretch of trail on the lake becomes an overview of the little village, while the island gets near. The ancient lake of San Giulio, a pool of water reflecting the green hills, where a small island lies, shaped by human dexterity, whose elliptical shape rises from the water like the eye of the lake to the sky. On its short perimeter stand the palaces that once belonged to the canons, dominated by the Basilica of San Giulio and the Benedictine monastery, once the 19th century seminary built over the Lombard castle remains. The legend of San Giulio tells that he arrived on this island by spreading his cloak on the water and defeated the dragon that haunted the isle, the paganism in the Christian conception. Here he founded his 100th church in the end of the 14th century, the basilica still housing his mortal remains. A stair leads to the entrance of the Basilica of San Giulio, erected in the 9th century over the original church founded by the saint. The walls of the church were painted at different times. Among the most important artists we remind the pupils of Gaudenzio Ferrari and the Cagnola family of the 15th century. The walls were painted in the 18th century by Giovanni Battista Cantalupi. The most important artistic part is the majestic pulpit carved out from the local black serpentine stone of Oira, a masterpiece of Romanesque sculpture dating from the beginning of 1100. Archaeological investigations have revealed the remains of an ancient church dating to the late 5th century, providing a historical basis to the legend of San Giulio. Out of the basilica we are immersed in the quiet atmosphere of the island. In this piece, a beautiful path called the Way of Silence and Meditation runs the short perimeter of the island, insinuating itself between the villas and the canons' palaces, and showing different views of the lake as in a natural art gallery. The Bishop's Seminary overlooking the island was built in 1844 on the ruins of the ancient castle tower. Since 1973 here live the only local inhabitants, the nuns of the Mater Ecclesiae monastery, who study the ancient texts, restore the tapestries, and cook the well-known San Giulio bread. A short part of the lake separates us from the village of Horta, tied to its island by the same historical destiny and the long episcopal self-government. Once the village of Orta was fortified and its walls rising from the lake surrounded it. The beautiful Motta Square was a natural gulf, and the lake extended to the first houses of the village where the boats docked. Around 1400 the walls were pulled down, with the remains of which the square was enlarged, and the building of the coast community was erected in 1582, the center of the bishop's govern. On its walls are painted the arms of the bishops, while above the main door is painted a woman who personifies justice. In Via Bersani, the most ancient street, there is a tower with only 3 floors left, that once connected the island fortress, the Tower of Pella and that of Buccione, forming the base of a fortified triangle. The charm and the mystery of the ancient village arises from the narrow streets. Portals, lintels and carvings in the rock bring us back in time, in a journey that began 2000 years before Christ. A piece of history recently rediscovered through a publication by Professor Calderini. Bossi Palace, with its garden overlooking the lake, is the seat of the town hall and the tourist information office. Going up a lane, we arrive at the Oratory of San Bernardino. The history of this church has still many mysteries. In 1939, 2 meters deep, it was found a tomb of the brothers with 50 skulls disposed radially. From the Church of San Bernardino we pass through the so-called Wolf Narrow Passage, and we arrive to the Motta Slope, along which many ancient palaces stand. The most antique construction seems to date back to the 14th century. The Marangoni house, called Dwarf House for its small windows, was the location of the old bakery and the other shops of the community. The front wall is decorated with 3 paintings depicting the Annunciation, the Ascension, and the Madonna and Child. Beneath its arcades and the surrounding area took place the old market. In front of it there is the neoclassical Ubertini Palace, with 2 balconies and a large central doorway from which the carriages passed to enter the inner courtyard. The palace, built in 1700, must have belonged to the Gemelli family, as shows the coat of arms on the arc of the new narrow passage of the Wolf. On the opposite side rises the late Renaissance Gemelli Palace. On the cornice of the facade there are Flemish frescoes inspired by mythology. The structure of the building is embellished with a splendid example of Italian garden. At the top of the Motta Slope stands the bright parish church of Santa Maria Assunta, built in 1485. The walls inside were depicted by the Orta painter Luca Rossetti, by the Morazzone School and by Giulio Procaccini. From here we climb over the old street that once gave access to the fortified village of Orta, till we reach the Sacro Monte of Orta. A UNESCO World Heritage Site nominated in 2003, which represents a successful integration between architecture and decorative arts in a landscape of great beauty and spiritual value. The Sacro Monte of Orta is a devotional path consisting of 20 chapels painted and completed by groups of terracotta statues of life size, illustrating the life of San Francesco d'Assisi. Every time we see the chapels in the path through the green, we remain fascinated by the whole landscape and the architectural structures. In the quiet of this place you find groups of tourists following their guide and simple visitors walking with admiration in the boulevards. The construction of the Sacro Monte began in 1590 and lasted until the late 18th century. The site includes many features of the different styles, ranging from the sober frescoes painted by the Morazzone to the Baroque style of the frescoes of Nuvolone brothers. From the sculptors who produced statuary groups such as those intimate by Cristoforo Prestinari of late Renaissance, to the most striking works of the sculptors Dionigi, Bussola and Beretta in the 18th century. Noteworthy is the contribution of local, skilled craftsmen who left numerous evidences in the details that enrich this majestic site. We descend down to Via Fava, a last look to Motta Square, then we walk on the lakeside leading to Bagnera Resort. Here our journey ends. From here, through the Francisca Old Path, you can return to Gozzano. We meant this journey as a simple hiking through the arts and the environment. The history and culture of these places deserve a deeper knowledge, an invitation to enjoy what we have near us, but that may also be a popular destination for international tourism. We thank the Cusio City Union that gave us the opportunity to create this documentary and all those who contributed to its realization.